David Bush, Margaret Clement here, John Enright Randolph.
Here.
Scott Ferris,
Here.
Woody Fields,
Here.
David Henry, Jeff Morris,
Here.
Julie Thomas,
Here.
Joe Van Deventer, and Steve Bishop.
Here.
Okay, so we have 7 voting members and 1 non-voting member in attendance and quorum.
All right, let's go ahead and begin with administrative business. I think, first up is a discussion about the Monroe County Airport Association.
Or apartment association.
What do I call it? Airport. For the inside. Airport Association. Another discussion.
Sure, so, Tammy attended a presentation at the Apartment Association in early June. And from that meeting, there were some group meetings, discussions, follow-ups from that meeting, and they sent to us an addendum from those meetings regarding some of their board memberships, feelings about this year's leasing opportunities and what kind of issues that they're facing. So we wanted to share this with our group, make sure that you were able to read through this, and we appreciate your support in going to the Apartment Association Board. I think the discussions are always really interesting to us. It's really helpful even being at a round table with those guys to kind of see the different challenges that they're faced with and to also see where planning fits in. So I know I've appreciated in the past, I appreciated Tammy attending again this time. And basically our presentation to them was, you know, we passed the county development ordinance. Here are some of the changes that we've made to date, things like that. So I think that they appreciate us continuing to attend. And I know that David Hiddle, prior planning director with the city, also presented. So it's good to have the county and the city there and present. So we just wanted to bring this to your attention. If there's anything that you'd like to discuss as a group or ask us, we're here, but just wanted to share this with you all.
I think we should have a group discussion about this, because this is significant. It's 90%, below 90% is the first time I've seen a formal document, because this was a public notice, right?
This was something that they sent us as a stakeholder in the apartment association meetings. They didn't say necessarily that it was confidential, but it was something that they shared with us, so.
So it's open source. Well, less than 90%, you should all, if you haven't read this thing, you should read it, because this is a very important data point for other discussions that we keep having about housing.
Yeah, it's important, especially when you talk to Judy Sharp came and talked to the Builders Association. One of the things she pointed out was that the new student housing complexes on the north side of town had already come to her for reductions in their tax base because they're not leasing up. And they've only been around for a couple of years. So if they're having a hard time, legacy units are obviously going to have a significant too.
Anybody else have a?
I would like to get a report or from Judy Sharp. And, there are a lot of, this report is coming before a lot of new apartment complexes are yet to come online.
There's like 1,000-ish beds going on this year, and there were like 400 or 500 last year.
Yeah, and there's still some that have been approved that haven't yet been built. And I think there might be more than 1,000 coming online.
I'm sure it's a fluid number. Does any of this, I know it's separate from the recent developments with Hunter Properties, but I know there's some discussion there about the lack of a hand-type entity at the county level. Is that anything that kind of involves this discussion as well?
I actually was going to mention that too. I mean, we're talking about the rental space. I know we will jump in, but I'm just wondering, like, where is planning's involvement as we start permitting, actual, rental units that share like structural walls and things of that nature, not necessarily like someone renting out their actual single family, but unit homes, triplexes, duplexes, apartment complexes, and the ability for planning to add language that says, that has some type of authority where, we're not dealing with the same issues where the recourse for, poor property management is, going to the health department on a case-by-case driven basis, or structural issues and going to the building department. And there's a loophole with some insects sorry, or if you're experience like migration of insects, rodents, and things like that, there is somewhat of a loophole where it's a structural issue because you have a shared wall. But again, the only authoritative mechanism is, going to court and dealing with that on a case by case basis instead of holding a developer and an owner of an apartment complex responsible. And I know you want to defer to Dave, but I do think that's a big part of this discussion, hearing from the rental community from what their needs and concerns are, but what are other thoughts of what we need to do as a county by seeing more of these developments, and where does planning actually have a play in this, if anywhere?
What I was gonna add was, I think that, the state took away our ability to create, an inspection, component such as hand. They did that maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago at the state level, but hand is grandfathered. So even if the county wanted to start their own inspection program, we are now part of it.
Yeah, I mean, about all you can do is limit where multi-family dwellings would go. Because if they're permitted, and somebody comes in and has a complete application, you have
Could I just,
Go ahead.
jump in here, this letter is about quantity of housing, not quality of housing. And I think that those two issues are separate, and we've just heard that, we really can't do anything. It's not grandfathered in like the city, but quantity of housing is what's addressed in this letter, declining occupancy, oversupply, and shifting tenant behavior and qualifications. So I don't know if we can agree to stick to one issue, or if we're going to be talking about.
I personally disagree. I've seen one and the same. Quality and quantity can't differentiate between. I understand that they want to focus on that, but how can you get by with thinking that, okay, let's just permit, all this housing with no quality assurance behind it? It doesn't make. I can't distinguish between it. I think it's a fair point. I don't know if that question suffices my curiosity or that answer, as far as like, we have conditions, we have standards. Could some of those be, if you want to do this, a condition? If it's not a condition, we could put conditions in place where then they would have to
How do you enforce it?
commit to these things.
How do you enforce
Enforcement is a big part of it. And also understanding true occupancy and true demand is a complex issue too. So, I'm appreciative of the letter, understanding that. It's just, there's a lot to unravel there. And I personally, just based off of what I was reading up, and it sounded like I wasn't the only one that was interested in that discussion. That's just my feelings around the matter.
Do you got anything?
That's where's the city fall in? This sort of a thing.
With which part?
I mean, that's, pretty much all growth is in city limits. Right now, it's permitted by the UDO. in
With condition like this, Mr. President, could I ask if you pause the question because we lost our team's
Why are these
connection?
people continuing to build? If this.
Stand by for a second. Let's go ahead and reestablish teams.
Where is smart building? If this is the thing we're doing.
I mean, why do people keep building? Is there a federal component to shoving money into multifamily, affordable kinds of
Rudy, do me
things?
a favor, because we lost teams, just restate what your question was.
I,
About
my question was, what is the city? You know, where's the city's position on with this condition that we're talking about here with the apartment association?
I don't think it's been brought up in one of our meetings yet, because this would happen, I think, in between but it's certainly something that probably needs to be addressed from either Lynn Coin or elsewhere other than me. But I know that, you know, as it currently sits with the UDO, I mean, you can't not allow these things to go forward, but in terms of investment money, I can't tell you the reason why they're continuing to go forward, other than these projects have long runways and they were already in the works, and it's probably no trouble to stop them to continue with.
And one thing I was always thinking is that in the past, most of the financing was done by local banks and area banks, and they had a finger on the pulse of the market. Is the money now is coming from hedge funds and all over the place where
Venture
they
capital.
don't care.
So perhaps the only, if you do believe that the role of planning is to steward development on land, wise use of land, if you believe that, then the UDO has to change and the CDO has to prevent, make some corrective action so that we don't continue to have this oversupply and, rampant kind of use of land that could be used for the type of product that the residents say they want, which is single family homes. Yard, this is the Midwest, this is what the surveys have shown that people want. They don't
You
necessarily.
would hope that a market analysis for a developer coming into our area would take a look at the market and see what the availability, because of the input of additional students at IU, et cetera, or loss thereof. And as a result, come up with a plan on whether or not they're gonna invest in another apartment complex or even a hotel for that matter. If for a convention center, you would hope that that market analysis would be done. If I were investing in something like that, I want to make sure those people were doing a market analysis.
But how do they do a market analysis on these zombie properties? Like there are 4,250 units that are approved for the Summit District on a PUD.
Yeah.
And that is not expired.
That's a question for the,
North Park,
it's a question for these guys.
May I ask to follow up
Go
on
ahead,
that, is
go ahead.
like, what like expiration, because we always talk about like things that have approval, underlining approval. Do we have language that starts to make these a lapse? And they have to go through a process again. Also, even if a PUD was granted or a major or minor 10 years ago, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't, if they started today, they wouldn't have to start complying with it, or do they have to, or are they held within the context of what the ordinance was when they first got their approval?
It depends.
It depends.
So if it's a subdivision, it's final platted, and they just haven't built out the residences, they're likely just going to go in and build as they are. There's no expiration to that, the lots are created.
Okay.
But PUDs, if they haven't done a development plan yet, but they have an ordinance, that does have a timeline to get an expiration, but it has to come before this board to officially expire it. We've done it I believe one time we did it down in Harrodsburg, we tried to bring forward one to expire, but then it ended up being amended and kind of lessened in terms of intensity, but it wasn't expired. It's something that we can look at a whole state.
And I feel like it's a fair point to bring up of where all of these potential underlining by right situations are, if you will. A handful might have to come back and renegotiate, but my overall thoughts on there is no guarantee that these underlining approvals means that they will ever get to a build out phase. So, by adding that into our equation of how many units are actually available, that doesn't really reflect what the built out environment and actual units are there for people
For that year.
for that year. So like, it's a very complex discussion, but also I just want to touch on that since you brought it up, Ms. Clemens,
Right.
that like,
You're
I'm not finished. Thank you. That, I know, but Mr. President, when I hear the sighing and things, it's disrupting and it makes me lose my train of thought sometimes.
Sorry.
It's just a complex situation. I just want to distinguish between the two. And we do need to be problematic to make sure that we are looking at sustainable build outs and growth.
Okay. Margaret.
Okay, there again are some mixed, confusing kind of levels of analysis. One is we're referring to expiration that the county has on PUDs. And we're not talking about expiration that the city has on PUDs. And the example that was raised, which was the Summit District PUD with 4,250 units, that was approved in 2024. We don't know exactly when that PUD expires, and we, this body, have no control over that or oversight with that. The same is true with the Hopewell project that has 750 units. And that was approved, I guess, this year. And we don't know when the expiration of that project is, or even what form it's going to take, because it hasn't been fully through the proposal process for the contractor to build the unit. Never mind, there are still a lot of units that have really come online in the last several years that have resulted in what I see is this foreseeable conundrum, which we have an oversupply of one type of housing, and that and it has now become alarming to the apartment association. And there's still many approved apartments that have yet to be built, so I think that that's the issue, and that we should be charged with discussing, and what role the county should take as a plan commission when we see this type of multifamily housing come before us, and what type of collaboration can we do with the city to ensure that we can work to ensure that the type of housing that people who live and work in Bloomington actually want is being built.
Julie or David Henry? Is David Henry on there?
Yes.
You guys have any comments? Julie?
None at this time, thank you.
Okay, David Henry?
None for me either today, thank you.
Right, I think we had pretty good discussion. My only point is that I treat this as almost as a public document at this point. And in our discussions, as we continue down this housing conundrum, as Margaret said, this is a data point that we should bring up on occasion, and this now becomes, in my mind, a source document. This is now a source document. It's a data point that we can use in the discussions. If in fact somebody's gonna come in and they wanna build something in the county, one of the questions we're gonna ask, if this is still valid, is that your occupancy rate is below 90%. Is this something you still wanna do? Is it something your investors wanna take and invest in? And they might say, well, that's not our interest because it's one of these out-of-state, investment, consortiums that want to come in and just build, and then after 10 years, walk away. But this, in my mind, is a data point. That's what this is.
Who is the apartment association? Yeah. I mean, how many people, what's their backgrounds, what's the,
So the executive director, Suzanne, I believe her background is she owns a private company that partially helps with management of private HOAs. So you can hire her on to help with your subdivisions HOA management, making sure fees are collected and things are getting done on time. But it's made up of a lot of different apartment complexes in the community. I don't know that they're getting the ones that are outside investors, but there are a lot of familiar names there at the organization. There is some overlap with the building association, but I would say more so it's kind of two separate groups talking about, on the roundtables, what's nice is you get to discuss with them what tactics are these folks using to get more leases and, how is that impacting your business? Tammy overheard one person say they offered first month of rent free and people were actually moving in for 1 month and moving out and getting free rent for a month. Yes, so they were having to deal with the turnover and the cleanup, and short-term leases are certainly causing them more breakup of continuity of leases.
Any other questions on this topic? Okay, let's move on to the next item of administrative business, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's admin business, number one, there's no public comment. And it will be decided by this body, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now the first Southern Meadows items here, phase one, phase two, phase three. Do you want to do them as a bundle? You want to do them independently? You want to take and do a bundle and have individual motions? What's the best way to present them?
I would say the first one, phase one, could be done separate and then phase two and three together. Is that okay?
Okay, then please proceed with
Okay.
SIA 22-3, which is phase one performance period extension and inflation adjusted performance guarantee amount.
Okay, so
Just. The screen is not being shared, at least on the laptop I'm beginning.
all right, thank you.
Over to you, Jack.
All right, so phase one, this was continued from our original discussion in March. So this one is a request to extend the period of time. Southern Meadows phases 1 through 4 have been recorded. I believe it was late 2024, early 2025 that the Plan Commission reviewed the phasing change to Southern Meadows for phases 4, 5, and 6. They stated that they wanted to rearrange some phasing due to the demand of housing. So first 3 phases are pre-CDO, last 3 phases are post-CDO. So that's kind of the difference here. So though they have the bond and the performance guarantee in place for phase 1, now that the timeline has come to their performance period, we need to do an inflation adjustment for the extension and get it officially granted. So they're asking for 2 more years. So originally their expiration is this August 18th, 2026. They would like until August 18th, 2028 to complete all the improvements and get it accepted into the inventory. So the red text here is what's different than what you saw in March. So I just wanted to give an update. So basically the Plan Commission, when you met, you asked, what are some of the progress items that have been made? What's going on out at phase 1? So they have been communicative. And basically, they have focused in on the what's called CLOMAR, the conditional letter of map revision, which is needed for the turn lane on South Rogers Street. They said that basically the application is in, they've received the first round of comments. And they estimate it could be 12 to 36 months for approval. So best case scenario, August 2027, worst case, August 2029. So we also received a letter, the Blind Squirrels or the CINL property that adjoins the phase one has been purchased by a new developer. And they are moving forward with developing that property. There's footings in on the townhomes on one of the phases. But they are okay with the multi-use path going in after they finish construction. So that was something that they were supposed to do a long time ago. But this new owner says, wait, I'm going to be doing the townhomes. I don't want it to be basically torn up and then have to redo the path myself. So they've come to an agreement on that part. So we do have those two, new exhibits in the packet. I'll also mention that the highway department has continued to express concerns about the lack of a turn lane on South Rogers going both ways and continues to get complaints by the public. We talked about internally, maybe some signage that we could add, but we're not sure what that might be, where it would be located. Really, we'd just like to see the flow market approved so that they can do the construction in that area and make it safer for the motoring public and pedestrians. So other than that, we did receive as-bills before the last meeting and we've assessed, missing items, so we have missing street trees, a few missing sidewalks, curb and gutter missing in some places. And usually that coincides with the lots left to be developed, so we do have some 2026 aerials in place now. But most of the, phase one, it is mostly built out. But phase one does include the common area, and then they also did, do some fill in the floodway, which is kind of what progressed the Clomar necessity on South Rogers Street. So they had to do compensatory storage, so basically they had to dig out an area for where they overfilled and make that net neutral as best they could. That is shown in the aerials, and this is the plat for phase one. And then the original estimate here, which totaled $337,382.64. And then I've included some as-bills here. You can see that they've got the contours in, the sidewalks for certain segments. So for instance, along lots 71, 70, and 69, there is no sidewalks, but as of the date of this aerial, those homes are not yet constructed, so that's not unusual that they wouldn't put the sidewalks in until that time. And then the last exhibits down towards the end of the packet, like I mentioned, are the letter from the developer to the west stating they're okay with the timeline for the multi-use path being later, and then the FEMA confirmation that they did indeed submit. They've been in correspondence with us on that. So staff is recommending for this phase a inflation adjustment and a 2-year extension. And that is partially because we would like to see this phase one and all the phases completed by the developer. And with that inflation, it would be a total of $371,120.90. And as a reminder, here's what we have actions to be able to do if we deny them from a performance period extension. So we draw the financial guarantee, the county can or may complete all or some of the improvements as the funding allows, so taking this amount without the inflation adjustment. And withdraw that and try to complete the project using an outside contractor. And then if there's any necessary additional funds needed, sue the developer for any funds necessary to complete the improvements and fund a maintenance bond. And then finally, we can seek any remedy necessary to achieve the purposes of this chapter, the performance guarantee chapter, and as allowed by law or this ordinance. When we spoke about this case in March and the developer did review that recording, they expressed in person that they were really hoping that the plan commission would give them the ability to have the 2 more years and that they believe that they will get the project done.
Rudy, you're up first. Any questions?
Do you buy it? Do you feel like these people are truly engaged in moving?
So from the as-built and from what was approved, there are a lot of deviations. I don't think that by the end of the completion of all improvements, that those will be done in a fashion that will allow the highway department to accept those improvements. I think it will get finished. I don't know that it will get accepted. And there will be the battle that we have to go forward with, which is how do we get them to now take out segments of sidewalk in front of people's homes, including people's driveways that are now built out, fix them, and then try to get it accepted in a timely fashion. So we will see that for later subdivisions as well.
Joe? Joe, got any questions?
What's the impact to the residents that have bought that, those houses in the neighborhood? If this continue, if we extend this out 2 years, does this impact quality of life and homeownership there? Does it impact safety issues by not having certain infrastructure? I guess that would be my question.
Sure. I would say that luckily the big components are in, the stormwater infrastructure is in, most curb and gutter is in, pavement is in. What I think is, problematic as we keep these extensions going, maybe not the first 2 years, but beyond that time period, is that the maintenance of those infrastructure improvements are on the developer. So every snowstorm, that developer is out there plowing or hiring someone to plow. And over time, they can lose some interest in doing that. They can get some of the neighbors to complain, hey, I've got to really be out of the neighborhood at 5 in the morning. You can't come at 7. So I think that that kind of thing, when not organized by the county or a governmental entity or, something like that, there's a little bit of back and forth that can occur. But otherwise, the delay for the later phases, which we'll talk about, is impacting some neighboring connectivity of development of another major subdivision that was reliant upon some of these timelines stated. So without this getting done, then another development is not getting done. So.
Okay. And as far as like safety signs things, I know there's some concerns about turn lanes and things like that, and especially with the snow removal, I mean, that's another safety issue. Is there anything, if these do continue to be issues, 6, 12 months down the road, but within the 2-year period, I mean, is there anything we can do at that time, or is this kind of we're setting this in motion and it has to stay in place for the duration?
So the inflation adjustment is getting people moving. I also think that the developer was entertaining or interested in getting a reduction. And when we reviewed those as-built with them, we actually saw not only not a reduction, but an increase by like $2,000. So they kind of walked away from the reduction idea because they weren't able to achieve that. So holding that amount of money does get things moving in the right direction. I don't think that a 2-year timeline is going to impact the quality of life of those residents in that phase. I'm glad to see that phase 4 was platted, which gave them access to College Drive. There was at least 2 instances in the last 2 years where that one access point at Baton Rogers was closed off for a short time period, whether it be the tornado that went through that area or flooding or things like that. So we're glad to have that other access point there.
Margaret?
Well, I just have to commend you, Jackie and Tammy, for all the work you do in working with the developer, knowing all these details, advocating for the residents in those neighborhoods, foreseeing the complications that can arise if this is prolonged. And I just am so impressed by the report you've given and the detail of information and your work with the developer. So thank you thank you for doing all that.
I appreciate it. And I think the stormwater program has done a fantastic job of being out there and trying to work with the developer as well, with the deviations that we've seen between plans and what gets built. They're trying to work with them the best that we can.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I expressed public safety concerns when we talked about this in March, and it's been 5 months and nothing has changed other than the situation getting worse now that the Blind Squirrels 2.0 construction has started. And I saw somebody walking in the road just a couple days ago, right in that area. So I realize that the new developer doesn't want the side path there while they're doing construction, but I think the reality is that side path should have been there years ago, so it should have already been there. So I just think we're at a point where what we're trying to do isn't working and we need to go a different direction.
Julie, you got anything?
I do not, thank you.
Sorry, what you
She said, I do not.
All right. David,
I do not, thank you.
okay, Tron,
Yeah. Where exactly is that side path, like on the aerial?
Sure.
And my question is,
It would go like this,
and is,
and then it connects,
and where is the area that's in the floodplain for the FEMA, the Loma?
basically,
There,
in here.
so it's not necessarily the entire side path, but it's a big, it's within, the side path is
Locally
within.
outside of the flood.
Okay,
They could put it
next
in.
to school, right?
okay, so the side path,
No?
Side
No, that was like a-
goes down.
that's on a different phase, which actually was forecast where I'm gonna bring this conversation in just a second. So just, I want to make sure that like where they're looking to work within that floodplain or get Loma where it's like almost changed. It's, even if we went about it and, you know, didn't extend this performance bond and wanted to go and try to do some of these improvements, we also would have to go through that process, that construction in a floodway or a Loma, so it's not gonna help expedite that issue. I think that also goes with some of the discussion with safety, you know, like the developers already going through it. I would almost think that we'd have to restart the process and it might delay it a bit because they're already going through that process. So I just wanted to kind of bring a little light to that. So it looks like they could be working on the side path. That would be nice. In that, is that side path in this phase or they committed to do it in phase one? And that's what I was really gonna ask, and I spent some time trying to find the phasing plan, but I didn't find it, and it's not in the packet, is it?
No, I don't think so. I
Right.
think so. This is phase one though, right here.
Right.
So each of the packets have the different phases.
And I guess my point there is, you know, there is that connection to the school, that's in a different phase. Where luckily we allowed a switching of the said phases so they could actually make that second connection, which was really important. And I guess my real point is, personally, I think we might be more in a carrot versus a stick situation by extending this. And also getting those other phases completed where it does have some community benefit with the connection to the school and also to that development that needs to create that second ingress egress too. And if we decide to pull and not extend the funds and do what we can it'll be limited. It won't be exactly what we're hoping. The developer may not pursue with the additional phases, and that's a big concern, for me. And then I guess my question is, and I know it's more opinion, and if you defer not to answer it, that's fine. Would you agree with my analogy that right now we have like a better carrot situation than a stick with extending this performance period?
I would say that they still have homes and lots that they wanna sell in phase one and will continue to improve on those and get those improvements in. I agree with your statement that even if the county takes this project on, we still have to do the Clomar process. And so that's not going to save us any time if they've already submitted for that. So I don't know if the county could do it any faster than Tom at this juncture. I will say that the issue of phases 5 and 6 being final platted, because of the requirement before phase 5 could be platted that they had to do the turn lane. they will have to let it expire because it also expires the 18th. And we told them that back in March and said, please come back to the plan commission and redo your approval so it does not expire. And essentially they said they'll just let it expire right now.
Well, that's unfortunate.
And this is the Shermer major subdivision that was going to connect
Right.
if this got platted in a certain time period. So now Shermer is also subject to expiration.
Okay, well. Thank you for addressing my question. Again, I just don't know what would put us in the best situation. My feelings are extending it and seeing what else can be improved and readdressing this in 2 years, even though I agree with you. That it would be nice that this would move a lot faster, so.
So my comments are, I'm a worst case guy. So let's assume the worst case here. Let's assume that we do not take and extend the period of performance. And in fact, we stop. What's going on out there? There's work stoppage at that point. On that entire facility in phase one, does it all come to a halt? Is he obligated in any way, shape or form to finish any type of change order or task order or anything with any of the homeowners who live in that area already? Is he obligated to do that? Or does he just say, you're not gonna extend my period of performance, so I'm going to take and stop all work on the property?
The county asked him to stop all work or that he would voluntarily stop all work.
Can he do stop work?
He could, I mean, if we cash his letter of credit, he's not going to touch any more sidewalks.
I got it, but you answered my
Yeah.
question on that. Who owns the property up there? He does, right?
On the lots not sold, he is both the developer and the builder.
Okay, and so assuming he can still move forward with. Could he develop on those individual lots at that point?
That's the tricky one.
Not as a subdivision, but as an
Right.
individual lot.
There's been some state law on, I would defer to Dave. Would you think we can still issue improvement location permits for vacant lots without a valid performance guarantee? If we knowingly cash it or don't extend the timeline?
Yeah, if there are funds under the law, if there's any performance left, then you have to keep issuing the occupancy permits and building permits. I don't know whether funds in hand from that letter of credit would be the same as a letter of credit. from
Like
the
a
developer.
cashier check versus, but
I
yeah,
just don't know.
And when you say don't know, do you mean like that would be determined by like adjudication and a judge? So like it's,
If the legislature would clarify.
even if you had case law that wouldn't give you a certainty, the arbiter would still be a judge to make that determination.
Well, if there were case law, because that means the judge had.
Where I'm going with this is that if in fact we decided not to extend a period of performance, and in fact this would go to litigation. Everything would pretty much come to a halt till a judge decided what's gonna happen in the next step, correct?
You would think.
I would think. So that impacts the people who live in that area. And so let's say that he is a work stoppage and now the county is responsible and we have that 330,000 K and some change. Who is going to take and be responsible for taking that money and building out the rest of the infrastructure? Who does that go to? Does that go to the highway department to do that, or you have to contract it out?
we contracted out.
Okay, so we go through a period of time and do you have to compete that contract, go through like an RFP or something like that?
It's over 150,000.
Okay, you see where I'm going with this.
It's gonna take a long time.
You go through litigation, you go through the RFP process, you have to bring on a contractor, you gotta take blah, 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 blah.
We have to hire more staff.
And so let me go take it another step. And so if the county is now responsible for that area because we didn't extend the period of performance. Does everything have to be done with respect to everything that needs to be done for the area before the county would accept an inventory and start plowing the neighborhoods?
Still
And so-
have to meet the requirements. That could mean even taking out what's there and replacing it correctly.
But it would not happen until all of those things are done. Okay, so you can see what we have. We got the people left high and dry. They're not getting the work done that needs to be done because it's all caught up in like litigation. The bringing it into an inventory is delayed because we got RFPs out there which are competing and we don't have a contract and so on and so on. I mean, this, in my opinion, this is a very serious question that we're trying to resolve here. I mean, it also has a precedent for anything we do in the forward, as we move forward. I accept what Jeff said over here. I mean, we've had some dealings with this developer before in other areas, and it's almost risk mitigation. It's what it is. We're in a risk mitigation at this point. How much risk do we want to take and accept? Versus if we don't accept that risk, what the outcome is and who in fact is going to take advantage of something like that.
So I will say though, that the amount that we are asking for with an inflation adjustment is going to be over what it would take for anyone to do the work, right? Hypothetically, because we're adding the 10% per year. And there's been progress, albeit not all of it could be accepted, but let's say 70% of it could be considered correct and acceptable. If we just take the money that we have today without the inflation, maybe, but if we continue to assess the inflation, I think that gets us closer to the mark and gets us in a safe spot, should the county have to take it on and do the work. But
I'm
if,
concerned
as
about-
long as they're in the game, I would encourage us to continue to just assess the inflation adjustment, establish real timelines, and keep the feet to the fire and let them continue.
I like that. I think that. Keep
But-
it booked and sort it out in the end.
I don't know, to Jeff's point, if we could condition the 2-year extension on possibly the side path going in any sooner. Such as like C of O of the townhomes or at least, I'm not sure what they did not state a new timeline other than the developer of the townhome said, I'm okay with it not going in right now and building. So I don't know what that means.
See,
I'm sorry.
sorry. The addition of that side path, though, would that yield a decrease in the financial obligation that he'd have to put up? Like, would there be a release of that predicated on that being completed to spec?
So they did apply for a reduction without that side path, but if they did put the side path in, yes, that's part of the estimate, so we would hypothetically be able to reduce the amount. What they submitted so far for reduction, like I said, we kind of evaluated the as-built and there were certain segments of sidewalk either missing or maybe not in correctly. And with the NDOT cost changes, we just weren't able to get there with a true reduction. So as they make progress and come back, yes, we could consider a reduction.
Because that seems like an easy path for them to get a reduction, no pun intended there,
Right.
but, so it seems like they're the shortest barriers to decreasing that, amount, putting in the side path regardless of what the other developer is okay with.
The problem with it is if they put in the side path today and they don't get acceptance review for 2 more years and the developer destroys that side path of, Clear Creek's developer, it's still on Somo's developer to come back and redo it. So that's why there's been a delay.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it twice.
That was my question. Okay, that was my exact question.
All right. Anybody else have any comments? David or Julie?
No.
I guess I have a.
Check it out. Go ahead.
A question to a fellow planning commission member, based off of the understanding that if they built that out in advance. And then the other development. Damages it or even makes it unpassable. Does that constitute a difficulty, a practical difficulty in a sense where that? I understand that we should have had it already done and then maybe even accepted, but since that was kind of something that you focused on, I was kind of curious what your thoughts were, if you want to share now after this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I understand if I were the developer of Blind Schools 2.0, I wouldn't want to put it in either because I would be afraid it would get torn up. But my biggest concern is the fact that this was approved and started in 2022, I think, and we're
talking about.
4 years in, and this continues to impact the safety of the neighborhood. And I fear that someday I'm gonna hear sirens and, find out somebody was hit in that area.
Is there a temporary? There's something they can do on a temporary basis? Oh, we haven't talked about that. Is there a temporary thing they can do?
Clear Creek Trail is over, to the west, the Clear Creek Trail is there, but the post office, rebuilt, and then the parking lots on the Blind Grove property, so you have passing traffic back and forth, albeit with a crosswalk, there is no sidewalk. So we have an encouragement for pedestrians to get from the parking area to the post office, crossing that intersection where we don't yet have a turn lane, so.
Can we impose a temporary fix?
People are using Rogers Street to access the trail. There's a spur across Southern Meadows, and then there's the part Jackie's talking about that intersects that road 100 feet west of Rogers.
So they're just hugging on the shoulder there.
Yeah, or walking through the dirt.
There's there's like a parking area here and then the rail trail right here, the Clear Creek Trail is right here. So you could hypothetically park here, go to the post office or come up and go to this trail here. It's trailhead parking. Essentially, is what it's-
Yeah, and it's not, I think it's people in the neighborhood that are walking the trail, but it's not isolated. It's multiple times a week. I see people on foot with now construction traffic on both sides of the road. So that's my only thought.
So we don't do temporary.
They could do a gravel path of some sort, but I don't know that it's something that we would,
I mean, you're putting people between the right of way of the road of Rogers and a construction site zone. And
yeah.
is there a portion that is complete, like the bioretention area,
Mhm.
perhaps maybe just having a short segment that could be built because they are finished with the bioretention area might be more reasonable. So you keep people on.
At
safe
least from
area,
the post
but then you,
office to the parking lot.
but then you're not really totally encouraging them to be right next to the construction of a building. Either.
Yeah.
I'm trying to directly answer your question. I'm going to hesitantly vote in favor of this because based on the discussion, I think that the developer continuing is the best path forward. But I just want to share my thoughts around the safety issues.
And your concern matters and, it's getting close to splitting hairs, so more understanding of kind of where you're at helps me make a decision. Thank you.
I do have one last question. That is that, when we take and ask for the increase for the performance bond, what we say here is from a reasonable time period. Can we put a stipulation on when that should be done?
The side path.
No, I'm talking about the reasonable time period for the increase in the performance, the later letter of credit. We say there in the recommendation, if approved, the developers required to sign a new performance bond document and update the amount posted within a reasonable time period.
Yes, we
I'm
can
saying-
state what the deadline is.
We can put a date, yeah, we put a specific date in there.
Yes. I would need a new letter of credit before the 18th. Because that's when the.
Well,
performance
can we put a date on that recommendation then? Pick a date, what date would you,
18th
okay, put that
before
on
the
there.
expiration date, okay.
I reluctantly am moving toward approving this as well. Just because of the argument or comments I put on the table is that be careful what you ask for. It might be worse than what you currently have, so. Anyway, I think we're at that point unless there's no more comments for a motion. Do we have a motion?
Sure.
You got it?
I moved in the matter of SIA 22 3. The extension of performance completion schedule that, staff recommends approving the 2-year performance period with our inflation adjustment amount. Is that what I really need to read all that? If approved, the developer is required to sign new performance bond documents and update the amount posted within a reasonable time period. With the thought that additionally, that the date of that performance bond would be included with this recommendation.
You want to stipulate the day?
Say again,
It's 18 August.
yeah. 18 August.
This year.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
second that.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve SIA 22 3, which is the Southern Meadows Phase 1 Performance Period Extension. There's been a motion and a second to approve until August 18th, 2028. And with the stipulation that a new performance bond document and a new letter of credit with the amount of $371,120.90 is submitted to the planning department by August 18th, 2026. The vote yes is a vote to approve. John Enright Renda,
Yes.
Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Hesitantly, yes.
David Henry,
Yes.
Rudy Fields.
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Also a hesitant, yes.
Margaret Clemens. Yes. Okay, the motion does pass 7-0.
All right, let's turn the page and, now, did you want to bundle the 22, 27 and 23, 5 into one?
Yeah.
Okay, Go
And the
ahead.
reason being for those two remaining phases, I think the issues are minimal compared to phase 1. There's not any common areas in these phases, and so you're really just looking at built out lots. So I'll just show you pictures of phase 2. This is phase 2 here. So primarily constructed. There are some segments that are yet to be built out. And I've zoomed in on those for you, and you can tell kind of where the sidewalk end was consistent with those lots that have yet to be built out. And then we have a estimate of $106,863.89. With inflation, that goes up to about $117,000. And then we do have the as-built, so we've assessed what's left in the neighborhood and what is still remaining. I did want to be transparent to state that we have been working with the developer on an enforcement case. They have started to address some of these items, such as in the green box. So there were some lots that were being occupied without MS4 coordinator at the time, now stormwater program manager, review of the as-bills, which was allowed to hold up certificate of occupancy. So there are still some remaining lots that we believe are occupied, but do not have certificate of occupancy at last check, which was right as this packet was published. But you can see they have been making progress to rectify some of the past lots that were being occupied without certificate of occupancy. And then they have done the remediation work for the placement of the fill in the floodway. And then phase 3 is, they have a letter of credit on file for $193,920.29. They have renewed the letter of credit, and if this performance period is adjusted to 2 more years, it would go up to $213,312.32. This one is even more straightforward. It does not include any common areas. There was one karst feature on this lot, but otherwise there was just lots for development. So mostly built out here. We do still see some issues such as the ADA crosswalks. There was a driveway put in a slightly different spot, so we only have one ADA ramp on this side instead of the 2 that were originally in the plans. So we've worked with them. This one is the closest to maybe being at the point of a possible reduction, but they're still trying to work with us on the other 2 phases. So they're making progress on this area. So that's phase 3. So with that, staff is recommending approval on both phases 2 and 3, getting those additional 2 years. And we would recommend, since the first phase has the performance bond document and new letter of credit with a deadline of the 18th, we think that's a good idea to include on these other phases as well.
All right, let's go with comments. Tron, we'll start with you this time.
Just one.
And stipulate whether it's phase 2 or phase 3 with your comments.
I'm not certain, and that's the question. I was trying to pull up, I think, what was it, phase 2? I was able to see the other phases. Phase 2, and then I was able to see phase 3. So my question is, I guess. The lower part, is that all phase 5 where the 2 houses are built out? And my question is, are we still looking at creating that connector to the school? And
So that was part of phase 5 that got refigured with the rephasing. Phase 5 and 6 are to the south. So they've so far platted phases 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I see some homes south already built out.
Sure, on the 2026 aerial, that might be phase 4. Which has been platted.
Right.
Yeah, because phase 4 got split into some.
And this kind of goes back to what we were talking
Part
about
of
with the
phase
walking
4 is
path.
like up here, and then the other part was
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
down
So
here.
if you zoom in, like right there, see where that little structure is? So. I guess they don't really have, they have the property, but it would be a big ask to ask for that connector. I really was excited about that potential connector.
Us too. So the connector is supposed to come off of a cul-de-sac that comes roughly in this area.
Okay,
And goes down to the school, I think, through this way.
Okay.
It wasn't, they do have a path that's gonna be, you can see it graded in here. So that will be part of this phase, and they are constructing that.
okay, that's fine. Thank you. That was my question. Hard to piece everything together without seeing all the phases.
David Henry, you got a question?
I do not. I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Julie,
No questions, thank you.
Jeff, Margaret,
No.
you,
No.
and Rudy. All right, I don't have any questions. Do we have a motion for both 22, 27, and 23?
So we'd have to stipulate each price maybe?
Do you want to take them one at a time, or you want to take them, do them both at the same time?
We can do them one at a time. that's
Okay,
fine.
let's go ahead and do 22, 27 first. Do we have a motion for 22,
A
27?
motion that we approve the 2-year performance period extension with the required inflation adjustment amount of $117,550.28. If approved, the developer is required to sign new performance bond documents and update the amount posted within a.
18.
Do we want to?
August 18th.
Okay, August 18th, 2026. That is my motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve SIA 22 27, which is a 2-year performance period extension until August 18th, 2028. The developer is required to post a new performance guarantee in the amount of $117,550.28, along with a new performance bond document, and that will both be submitted to the planning department by August 18th, 2026. A vote yes is a vote to approve with that requirement. Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
David Henry,
Yes,
Rudy Fields.
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes,
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Tron and Wright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, motion is approved, 7-0.
All right, let's move on to 23.5. Do we have a motion?
I'm prepared.
Please proceed.
I recommend approving the 2-year performance period extension with the required inflation adjustment amount of $213,312.32. If approved, the developer is required to sign new performance bond documents and update the amount posted within posted with the date August or on or before August 18th, 2026.
Second.
Again, it's been moved and seconded to approve SA 23 5 Southern Meadows Phase 3. A vote yes is a vote to approve an inflation adjustment of $213,312.32, valid until August 18th, 2028. And also to require the developer to submit a new performance bond document and new letter of credit in the inflation adjustment amount by August 18th, 2026. A vote yes is a vote to approve with that requirement. Jeff Morris,
Yes.
David Henry,
Yes.
Rudy Fields,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Harry Clemens. Yes. Tron and Ray Randolph,
Yes.
Scott Ferris.
Yes,
Motion is approved, 7-0.
all right. So we're gonna move on to Highland Park, and I think you probably want to present these all together, correct? Is that the way you want to do it, Tammy?
Mhm.
Okay, and that's 22, 34, 22.5, and 22.6. Please proceed.
So this one is looking at 3 SIA numbers and just sort of an update with phase 5. You all actually saw this back in April 7th, 2026. We did kind of an update back then, and you all had recommended that we continue to work with the developer to see if they could complete some improvements or provide estimates. Because they really do have this carrot of phase 5 that they recently replatted. And they want to be able to sell those 5 lots and finish out that part of the subdivision. That phase 5 is due to expire in March next year. And so they're really, I actually just did talk with the developer on the phone today, and I think after them reading this report, it is kind of lighting that fire under them to want to get this done and start sending out letters to the neighbors with their driveways that are not compliant, fix the sidewalks and that sort of thing. But back in April, we had sent them this letter right after the meeting, gave them a lot of information on what they could do, what are the next steps, what we need to see them do, and they didn't really do anything. Jackie has talked with them within the last week. I just talked with them today after they read the staff report. And so I think that they are still wanting to not have us cash the bonds. They want to finish this work themselves and get it accepted into the inventory, work with the highway department. So yeah, I think this one, we still have a bond on file for phase 3. This is a surety bond for $310,000. And we have a letter of credit for phase 4 for $132,000. Like, and he's confident that this is more than enough to fix what's out there, even though we've never seen an estimate, we've never seen as-built, like redone for these phases. The problem is that we can only spend that money in phase 3 for phase 3 and phase 4 for phase 4. We have phase 2 that has never been completed, and we do not have any financial guarantee on file for that one. So just to kind of reiterate, this is phase 2, that we don't have a financial guarantee on file for this section here, and it's completely built out, but we still need to see corrections to the sidewalks. This is phase 3. They still have 2 vacant lots, but they did put in the sidewalks for those 2 lots. And we do have that $310,000 in a surety bond, which we have actually asked to be a letter of credit. Surety bonds are more difficult for staff to administer if we do need to cash them in. And then phase 4 has the letter of credit for $132,000. And I think it's mostly built out also. What they haven't finished is phase 5, and phase 5, this is the petition that was approved in 2024 and is set to expire early 2027. It's to plat 5 lots. They are unable to plat it until they meet these conditions, and the conditions are basically complete phases 2, 3, and 4, or submit as-built, give us new estimates with the inflation and get those things done. I am not sure if they've gone to the traffic commission for parking signs yet. Yeah, I'm not, I think they did do this 24-foot wide road change, so we did get that one done. And this is what the plat looks like, those are these 3 roads. And they have the sidewalks in and they have street trees in for this, like it's ready to be platted, but because we have a written commitment, well, because we have a condition that we require a written commitment, that they tell us when they're gonna have it done, the other phase is done, or they finish those other phases, it's not something they can pursue yet to get this platted and recorded. So our recommendation for this one is to extend the performance period until December 31st, 2026 to complete all the work and have an application submitted to the highway department for acceptance into the inventory. If the developer fails to meet this final deadline, staff recommends that we draw all financial guarantees on file and forward this to legal department to file a complaint for not completing the improvements in the time period required under the subdivision improvement agreement and as extended by the plan commission. I will say that Jeff Kreider was unable to attend this, but he gave me his cell phone, and if we wanted to ask him questions, we could call him. He thought that the language in the staff report was a little bit harsh. He didn't think it needed to come to the point of us getting the legal department involved. He really thinks that within the next 4 months, he could get crews out there, notify the neighbors, have things lined up to get this work completed and looking to be something that the highway department would accept into the county inventory. So I think that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Do you want to talk about, or do we need to talk about, and obviously what you're recommending here is a little bit different than what you're recommending for the other ones, correct? Or are they all the same recommendation?
There, I mean, that is, the recommendation is to extend performance period for basically all 3 of them.
Okay, got it.
It would be nice if we had an estimate and performance, like a financial guarantee for phase 2. But it's unlikely we can get that without having as-built an estimate discussion. I think so we're just leaning on and get it done.
All right, so let's go ahead and start over here with you, Rudy. Questions? Okay. Steve? Margaret? Jeff? Julie?
I just have a comment which is pretty basic. I understand that they may believe that this language is harsh, but it's been a long time and I think we need to proceed this way to ensure that things get done. Thank you.
David?
No comment.
Okay, over to you, Tron.
You said the carrot is another phase. Is that the phase to the north that is vacant, not platted right now?
Correct. 5 lots.
That's only 5 lots.
5 lots plus a common area. And they built the road, sidewalks, and street.
I see the road. Okay, cool. I just wanted to understand the size of that carrot. No comment. No more other questions.
I support the recommendation and the language, which is pretty direct. So we're ready for a motion.
For cases SIA 22-34, 22-5, and 22-6, I move extending the performance period until 12/31/2026 to complete all work and have an application submitted to the highway department for acceptance into the inventory. If the developer fails to meet this final deadline, staff recommends we draw the financial guarantees on file and forward this to the legal department to file a complaint for not completing the improvements in the time period required under the subdivision improvement agreement and was extended by the planning commission.
Is it okay if I ask about a question about your motion? It says staff recommends we draw all financial, or are we gonna readdress this, or if they don't make that deadline, are we instructing that we do move forward with withdrawing? That's a question. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly with your motion. And if you would permit, I would be curious what staff is looking for, because that's ambiguous a little bit to me. Are you okay with me having to jump in the middle of that motion, or would you?
I can share my thought on it. My
Okay.
thought is, by making this motion, I'm saying that we go ahead now and approve staff to
Proceed.
do this, what we've mentioned here at the end of the year, if it's not done.
Okay, so I guess if that's what your intent is, I would say staff recommends, you would say that we have staff.
I would say we direct staff then, instead of
Okay.
recommend.
Great, I'll second that motion to extend the discussion period and see what planning was, intending with that, if that's okay. Mr.
I think we have
Ferris.
a motion and a second. I don't think there's any other discussion required.
I'll go ahead and reiterate just to approve it and then reread it, if that's okay. So the motion and the second is to approve SIA 22 34, SIA 22 5, and SIA 22 6. Highland Park Estates phases 2, 3, and 4. And this is to approve the performance period until December 31st, 2026. And the motion is to if the it would be to extend the performance period until 12/31/2026 to complete all work. Have an application submitted to the highway department for acceptance into the inventory. If the developer fails to meet this final deadline, the plan commission directs staff to draw all financial guarantees on file, forward this to the legal department to file a complaint for not completing the improvements in the time period required under subdivision improvement agreement as extended by the plan commission. A vote yes is a vote to approve. David Henry,
Yes.
Rudy Fields,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Not understanding staff's position, I'm gonna abstain because I'm not certain if that was the intent.
Okay,
But-
Scott Ferris,
Yes,
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Okay, motion still passes 6-0 to 1.
all right, that brings up SIA 2218, which is extension of performance period and inflation adjusted performance guarantee amount for Holland 3 lot minor subdivision. And Tammy, I think this is you, right?
Yeah, all right, for this one. So we currently have, a letter, well, it's a cashier's check for $20,777.88 on file. We had done a primary plat amendment, under SMN 25 or, just a little under a year ago, so November 2025, and that was approved, which had a lot of engineered designs to improve the intersection at Walnut Street Pike and Holland Drive. And that included some sidewalk rework, some widening of the road, curb and gutter, things that were gonna make that intersection more safe, which to date, that work has not been able to take place. There were two conditions that were put in with that, which was to also provide designs for the driveways for lots 1 and 2 and 3, make sure that they had ingress egress to those properties, but also worked well with the cross slopes. And to date, I don't think I even have seen a lot 3 right-of-way activity permit submitted for the driveway design. I also don't think it's been to the drainage board for these other 2 lots, so they haven't met these 2 conditions. I have heard from the developer of Holland Fields Phase 1, which kind of intersects with this development. And I also have heard from the developer of this, or the developer's representative for this Holland 3 lot minor. And they are going through They were trying to get a mediation date in place. They have one for this coming Friday. And I think the purpose of that is to kind of designate who does what, who's responsible for what at that intersection. And you know, they still haven't figured out if there's that fiber cable, if how much of a interference that's going to be with the corrections that are needed for this intersection and this, to make it so that the county can accept this into the inventory. So I think they still have a little ways to go. They have, and to, let's reiterate, that's this intersection here. And fixing these two driveways, proving that we have a good access to this one. And then widening and fixing the sidewalks that have never been completed for this area here. So just kind of going through and this driveway here would have to be reconstructed. Also this one for lot one, also reconstructed, because right now they're just not safe, not ADA compliant. We did, during the primary plat amendment, we did get a new performance period. We got new as-built with an estimate, so previously we only had $5,000 on file to fix this. Now we have this $20,000. But they missed their performance period. And so what they need to do and what they're requesting is that they extend it until June 30th of 2027, so a little less than a year. They also were willing to add the inflation cost to that current estimate that we have on file, so we would need to see this extra $2,077.79 on file. We don't accept maintenance bonds until the highway department goes to accept it, so that's not part of the conversation really. And so with that, we do have kind of a lengthy recommendation. I'll go ahead and read it into the record. So staff recommends a 1-year extension of the performance period until June 30th, 2027, with an adjusted inflation amount of $855.67 based on the approved estimate shown in Exhibit 3. The amount moving forward will not include maintenance bond amount, as that will be required at the time of acceptance and release of these funds per Chapter 833. It is subject to the following conditions. 1, that they submit additional financial guarantee in the form of a letter of credit or cashier's check in the amount of $2,077.79 by August 28th, 2026. An updated performance bond document shall be signed and recorded by September 11th, 2026. An updated subdivision improvement agreement document shall be signed and recorded by September 11th, 2026. And the petitioner shall apply for right-of-way acceptance on or before May 1st, 2027. I think that's the recommendation. And this should give them some time to go through their scheduled mediation with Holland Fields Phase 1 developer, and then also just get it correct. Yeah.
So the deciding body, or we the deciding body, or is the plan commission proper deciding body?
I should have put administrative.
Okay, got it.
That's new to me.
All right, so Tron, we'll start with you on questions.
No questions.
David, questions?
None at this time, thank you.
Julie?
None for me, thank you.
All right, Jeff?
Nope.
Margaret?
No.
Steve? Nope. Rudy? Nope. I have no questions. Do we have a motion?
For case SIA 22-18, I move that we accept the recommendation as read by Ms. Bierman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve SA 22-18 with the motion and conditions as stated by Tammy Bierman. A vote yes is a vote to approve. Rudy Fields,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Shannon Randolph,
Yes.
Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
David Henry.
Yes,
Motion is approved 7-0.
All right, that moves us to unfinished business. There is none. So we move on to new business, which is the CDO text amendment. And who's gonna lead the discussion on this, Tammy or Jackie?
We only have 552 pages of the packet to go.
And it says just 25 minutes. It does, it says 25 minutes.
We can be efficient.
Okay,
Did you go through it?
yes, yes.
So we did review a lot of these track changes from the ordinance review committee. We're glad to have our legal department help us with some of the state laws that came into effect starting July 1. One of the nice things about the CDO is that we do have this revisions page, which helps keep us on track, so you can tell what we are asking for. So many of these changes are related to state law changes, but I'll just go through and hit the big points because there are some that we are adding that staff led based on some of the conversations we've had with the public and also just with staff amongst ourselves. So we were recommending to add temporary or seasonal activity to the res zoning district. One of the things that we realized is that when we combined two zoning districts into res, we got rid of that ability in one of those zoning districts, and so right now, there's kind of a gap. Okay. Then we have the sporting goods, small, medium, large, and big box. That is a state law change, which basically says that sporting goods stores that sell firearms are permitted in some of the agricultural areas as well as other areas of the county. So we are having to make that change in the use table, and so we added it to the 2-pager. The next change that we're recommending, this is staff led, is to allow bus terminal in the heavy industrial district. And that is partially because there is a parcel that is been bought, for the purposes of constructing a bus terminal on Profile Parkway. And it's not zoned for bus terminal right now, so we'd like to see that added to hopefully prevent any issues of rezone in the future. And then, we have indoor shooting range as being permitted with standards in several different zones. So like I mentioned, agricultural, limited business, general business. And then it's light industrial, heavy industrial, mineral extraction, and I believe airport as well. And then there have been a lot of changes to the wireless communication facilities, and that's one that I want to go through a little bit more in depth. And then these are some of the changes again by state law for removal of a member, of a planning commission member. And then there were also some other definition changes. So I'd like to spend some time on the wireless communication facilities and explain this so that we can make the right change moving forward. There's maybe a little bit of room for discretion or direction as opposed to some of these other ones that state law has kind of forced our hand on. Okay, so here's wireless communication facilities. Okay, so this is the beginning of the chapter here, 812-3. And one of the biggest changes that the state law put into effect was that we are no longer allowed to regulate height. That used to be how we differentiated the process for these wireless communication facilities, was if it's over a certain height, it would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. If it was under a certain height, it may be by right and in a residential district. Now, after reviewing the code with the legal department, we do believe that we can still regulate these towers based on appearance, so we can say now all towers can be concealed in any zoning district. And that's something that we wanna talk to you about. Do you want to see more concealed wireless towers in the county? Is that something that is important to you? Without the ability to regulate height, we're getting a request in the office for a new 300-foot tower. We do have some grandfathered towers that are exceeding 300 feet, maybe the one on Night Ridge, is that one like 350?
I think it one off of 045, also, on Russell Road is pretty big.
Pretty tall, so we do have some that are over 300 feet, but we now would not even be able to limit, say, a 500-foot tower if somebody were to choose to do so. So now we're thinking about saying that they need to be concealed. There are some concealed towers in the county currently. There's one near Target. It looks like a flagpole, but it's a wireless tower. But here are some other examples of a concealed tower here. This looks like a tree. And then you can also place it on other structures such as a building. Typically, what we see though are new monopoles here with antenna and locations for co-locations. There's also been a lot of movement in state code for small cell facilities and micro wireless facilities, which are typically in the right of way. So these would be something that could be by right, not even with planning review, but they do have to meet certain requirements. So this chapter, we're differentiating based on requiring it to be concealed. It can be in any zoning district. If it's not concealed, we are saying it can go into any industrial, institutional, or business zoning district. So that leaves out rural residential, and airport. And the reason for airport is because there's some FAA rules that we can designate for height. So I wanna pause there and say, is that something that the planning commission agrees with? Cause all towers being concealed. And then if they're not concealed, then they would have a different process if in different zones.
I'm happy with language.
I just didn't quite get that last thing that you said there about if they're out in the county and they have to be concealed.
If they're in a rural residential or airport district, no matter what, concealed. If they're in
Agricultural,
some of the business or industrial districts, they do not have to be concealed as written.
So your farmer's field is gonna have it concealed.
say again.
Your farming field has to have it concealed. You're gonna put-
Yeah, that seems a little,
That's where you're going with that. I'm
yeah, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're in the middle of town, you're gonna have it sticking out there like a dog's parts.
We
And out in
actually,
the country, you're not. I just think that seems a little ludicrous.
out in California, the pine tree, I mean, it's very common out there.
Well, I've seen it in New York all over.
As a matter of fact, you don't even know you really don't even know it's a tower. You look at it, take a look really close. So.
Except a pine tree that big in the middle of a cornfield, you know,
Cornfield?
it's so little.
Yeah, you did.
You got sequoias here in Indiana, right? You have sequoias here, right?
Yeah. Well, I got a big hilltop out there. I know they've been looking at it for a long time and I don't know that, I don't know, it seems a little,
You're not paying for it though.
I know,
You're not paying.
Somebody's somebody's
So
paying,
you're gonna have an unsightly tower versus one that looks like a pine tree in the middle of your field?
but you're gonna have one in town. You know, I mean, what's the difference?
How about it's a 300-foot flagpole off you?
Yeah, you put a flagpole.
I think it looks like, you're gonna have cell tower, probably ought to look like a cell tower.
Julia's her hand raised.
Okay, Julie?
Yes, I partly agree with what Mr. Fields is saying. I think it should be masked or hidden everywhere. So the part I agree with is in more congested areas, it's even more important to hide the tower. I actually have a question for Mr. Schilling, since he appears to be in the room. And that is one of the things we talked about when this came up in the ordinance review committee, was whether or not we have any ability to regulate these based on especially with the larger, taller towers, not so much the micro minis on utility poles, but on the regular self-standing, self-supporting towers, if we have the ability to regulate them based on their fall zone to protect people, yeah, and buildings. So I wonder if you could address that. Thank you.
Yeah, my recollection is that we cannot, the setback, they cannot, the fall zone can be essentially 0 feet. Is what we're saying is you have to accept the engineer's, conclusion on the fall zone. And they're coming in now saying, oh, these towers are designed to fall in on themselves. And so there's a 0-foot fall zone.
Really?
We have a requirement right now that we're allowed to impose a setback plus fall zone, but some of the setbacks could be quite small, such as in the business district, I think it's 5 feet side. So if they were to say the fall zone is 0 feet, our only recourse under the state law is to hire our engineer, a county paid engineer, to dispute their engineer's fall zone.
Just kind of. That's actually what I was gonna ask, so I'm happy that you jumped in there and asked that question, Commissioner Thomas. And maybe this, sorry, I wasn't at the ORC, but maybe this would have been better then, but, are we able to do anything as far as like immediate structure or residential structure that they have to be so far away from? So like, instead of using a setback, we use like from like a front door concept, like it needs to be at least 150 feet away from any immediate structure that's occupied from a commercial, industrial, or residential, like, did you explore that avenue of how we could go about regulating these? And if it's, there's always the variance process, so, it's not shutting the door completely on the idea of building these, but, it might be limiting where they can go based off of what is already built out.
Yeah, I don't think so. The way to get that set up, it's pretty restrictive.
Okay, well, that would just be something that I was kind of curious about. It kind of somewhat goes in line with the fall zone. It's if we can't regulate a fall zone, but we can potentially regulate, a proximity of how much distance they have to be from a occupied structure, would be interesting. Again, it's like another safety angle to the whole thing. My other question was more broadly, so we can't regulate height, but we can regulate zones, or we can just put different conditions on what zone they. So my question is, could they basically build anywhere regardless?
The concealed and certain.
Concealed. And that's based because we have an ordinance that says they have to be concealed.
Right, so the way that the ordinance is currently set up is the first part is, here's what you can submit to us to get staff level approval, no
Right.
public hearing. And then if they can't meet that, then they have to go and get a conditional use from the board of zoning appeals, notify
And that's
neighbors.
based off of concealed. Okay,
So, well, it could be, to Commissioner Thomas's comment, you could say everywhere has to be concealed, no matter what.
right,
Which right now in the county, we only have it say, differentiate between height of, I think it's 60 feet or less is allowed in residential.
yeah.
And then maximum 200 feet, but because we can't do any height restrictions, then we're looking at other ways that we can differentiate the process, so administrative review would be.
So were they allowed to be built at the 150 without being concealed in those zones that we're looking at now, industrial and business,
They were allowed.
that are not concealed up to 199 feet? So, okay, so we've been allowing that for quite some time.
We have been allowing up to 199 feet by right,
But now they can build anything.
but now they could go up to 300, 400 feet, whatever they would choose, but we've had these other requirements. If you want them to be concealed everywhere, we could do that, but they have not had to be concealed everywhere.
Yes, and that's, thank you, that's why I'm getting at, and to Mr. Fields' point, I think concealing them does create aesthetic benefit, but also additional cost where they might be needed too, which you could go through a waiver process and or conditional use process. And then I guess when we were referring to the city, that would be the city's ordinance. So unless you're talking about like the fringe area, so those
Industrial park.
yeah, so there is significant area in the county too, but. Okay, so. I'm curious, would we want to say anything that exceeds 199 feet must be concealed and then make that conditional, and then that preserves kind of what language we have here? And they would have to go through a conditional process to put anything up that's higher. And that's kind of where my thoughts are, is if we already had it as is it, I wouldn't consider it an overlook of us reviewing the ordinance. It's because the state came down with new language, we're reviewing it. And we could kind of keep it somewhat the same. And anything they want to do that exceeds the 199, we require it to be concealed.
I don't know that we can have a breaking point in the ordinance that differentiates the process based on height.
Okay. All
That
right,
would be my thought.
and that's all I was trying to get at. Thank you.
So my question is, and maybe for those folks who are listening, maybe I just didn't hear it. The setbacks and the fall zones, where are those addressed in the ordinance right now? I mean, you don't have to show me, but they are addressed in the ordinance right now. They're specifically state the setbacks and the fall zones.
So the fall zone itself is defined as the area in which a cell tower is designed to collapse. We cannot establish all cell towers have a fall zone of 50 feet. That's what's prohibited.
My question is the language in the ordinance that says that?
The latter or the former? The
latter,
definition,
the
okay, the latter, no, we don't say that we're not allowed to regulate a fall zone with a defined distance. We're saying we can require a fall zone plus the setback for the zoning district though.
And, okay, let's, what you just said,
Mhm.
is that stated somewhere in the ordinance? Okay. So we're really talking about whether they need to be concealed or not. That's what the discussion point is. Okay,
And whether you want them concealed in more districts,
right.
or if you like them concealed in
So
all.
Ron has made his point known. Anybody else have any thoughts on this going around table? Julie
I-
or Dave? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thanks. Yeah, I do. And not to complicate the conversation, but I guess maybe I may have missed it if it came up, but I mean, I guess I'd like to see an overlay of the current, reach of cellular or wireless in the county, because the overlap of a rural area in the southern part of the county that probably also doesn't have broadband or good access to cellular is interesting to me from a public safety perspective, but also just trying to run ground wire out in some of these spaces has been very hard. And so if I had an understanding of what the coverage map of the county was, that it could probably set up a condition where some towers, right, I mean, like would be it could, with wider reach, might make sense in some areas, whereas having infinite towers in rural spaces might not. The technology's changed. Even I think we even on this call I've heard us interchange cellular tower with wireless, but wireless means a lot of things now. Folks do run their devices off Wi-Fi as a hotspot, pulling off a tower if they don't have a hardwire access. So again, just thinking out loud about availability of that utility and what limitations of height does or doesn't do in this space is just, it has my attention. I think seeing an overlay map might help me understand just how bad the coverage is in some of these corners that we would be prescriptive in. That's it. That's a thought.
I have one
Go
additional
ahead,
question. So would any language that addresses height, you think would be kind of difficult to, like, if we said, you know, any wireless tower that exceeds 199 feet, cannot be constructed within a proximity of a residential or occupied structure, within, you know, 150 feet,
So you're saying like, let's say the tower's between 1,699 feet, you need this setback. If it's 200 to 300 feet, it needs this setback, or are you saying?
Yes, setback, if that's the right term to use in this discussion, but like just where it's not within proximity of occupied structure. Because we
I
can't
would
regulate
caution
all.
against, yeah, I mean, I guess I would just caution again against saying that it's not permitted because of the height. I think you could. Maybe, there's still some state code language that says that we can call something a substantial modification based on a height change to an existing tower, so the state's allowing us to say. Height matters, but they're just saying we cannot regulate it and we cannot discriminate against providers, based on a height differential only.
Okay.
So if there's other ways you can think about it, other than height. It's difficult.
Right, yeah, and my main point is like. It almost seems like. If they wanna build it, there's gonna figure out avenue to do it, and if it's not ideal, it'd be nice to understand if there is any mechanism out there that could. Prevent it or, restrain it to a certain. I don't know, I'm not gonna use the trigger word there,
So,
like where safety concerns take.
so that's, the question I would ask is, let me play a little devil's advocate. I want to build a tower. Okay, who do I talk to? What process do I go through? And what mechanisms in place to take and go through these steps on what they can and cannot do? What is the process? I
So-
think devil's advocate now.
Yes, so right now, they start with our office in the building department. And the building department's going to say, get your site plan approved by planning and then come back for the actual permits for construction. So we would talk to them and say, okay, go ahead and submit a site plan. Based on that site plan, we would say you could either be staff level review, or you have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And then depending on that outcome, say it's approved, then we're just looking at the things that we're allowed to regulate under this chapter, which is. We're allowed to say they have to have kind of a fenced in area around the monopole. They have to have vegetation surrounding that fence area, and, right now we're saying there's a height, but we have to change that. And setback. Then we go ahead and, once the site plan's approved, they get their permits for construction from the building department and us, and then we go out and we do what's called a land use certificate to see that it was constructed the way they said it would be.
Okay, but the deciding body is who? The BZA?
If it's conditional use, it's BZA. If it's staff level, it's just staff level.
And what parameters and legal authority does the BZA have with respect to what they can or cannot approve?
Yes, so that.
I'm just trying to walk us through what the
It's
process would be, that's all. I mean, I'm stating the obvious in some of this stuff, but,
It's helpful.
I mean, what can you do and what can you do on the BZA? Can you tell them,
Right, variances.
well,
Even we have granted variances to promote, the connectivity across our county and improve access to.
when you start
wireless.
talking about setbacks and fall zones
We
and
do.
height, you talk about that too?
Yes, it comes before us and they draw it out and they show the coverage map. Staff does a wonderful
And
job.
so,
of that.
but it's based on the consensus of the group on whether or not you're gonna grant that variance.
Yes.
Okay, that's, okay, you just answered the question.
Yeah. So here are the conditions or the materials they have to submit. So they have to submit a copy of the lease from the property owner. Evidencing the applicant's authority to pursue the zoning application. So they don't wanna buy the land. They usually lease it for 30, 50 years from somebody.
Then they have a written description and scaled drawing of the proposed support structure, including the height, the ground structure design, and proposed materials. We're allowed to review the height, so we still would see, okay, it's a 400
Yes.
foot tower. Number of proposed antenna and their height above ground level, including the proposed placement of antenna. And then we did take out, when locating within a residential area, a written technical and operational analysis of why a monopole or similar structure of height less than 100 feet cannot be used. Based on the state law. And then something that we find very helpful is a line of sight
Yeah.
diagram or photo simulation showing the proposed structure set against the skyline and viewed from at least 4 directions. So they'll actually mimic what the cell tower looks like over trees.
Yes.
Or if it's gonna be completely visible to certain directions of sight. A statement justifying why co-location, so locating their antenna on another tower isn't feasible. And then, it goes on to say a statement that the proposed wireless structure will be made available for other co-locations. Notification of surrounding property owners as required. And then fees, a fall zone calculation, and then they are responsible for notifying us of any confidential information. Something that the state added to is that this is something that legal needs to review, newer information, but where the BZA is technically not allowed to request. About a small cell facility, about additional wireless coverage or capacity or increased wireless speeds. Propagation maps or telecommunications traffic studies. Applicant's business decisions with respect to service, customer demand, or quality of service for a particular area, so. Some of this stuff is considered proprietary or just, we're not allowed to ask, so they are very educational and helpful, though, I think they're forthcoming when they come,
So
so.
Margaret, when you get a fall zone calculation based upon from a certified registered engineer, can you challenge that?
Well, according to what Jackie said, no, but if we have questions about it, we ask. And we ask the proposer, you know, to go into further detail about that. They usually simulate a fall zone. And, they're actually very forthcoming. They show us what they believe will be the enhanced coverage because of their cell tower, but I see now that they're not required to. But that aside, you know, the issue on the table today is whether or not they're concealed. And I just want to advocate for beauty. You know, I'd like to advocate for keeping our skyline a little bit,
Flagpole.
you know, a little bit more beautiful if we can, if it doesn't seem like it's a high barrier.
Tree that is 100 feet taller than anything else around it. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I don't see anything beautiful about that.
Well, I just know that that particular cell tower on Night Ridge, you know, I remember moving into our house out in the middle of the countryside and, you know, everything was great by day, but then you turn off the lights, open up the blinds and you say, oh crap. You know, there's that damn ugly thing, you know, but
Well, it's somebody's leasing that space and making $3,000 or $4,000 a month on their property,
right.
you know, and they're paying the taxes.
I don't have a problem with that. I
Yeah.
just like if they could conceal it a little bit. I think it's an argument for a little bit more attractive county. That's all.
Okay, so do we have any changes to the language that they're proposing?
These are some examples of other concealed towers. So
Yes.
could be flagpoles, bell towers, clock towers, crosses, monument smokestacks, parapet steeples. Not limited to, but
But such as, it's not the same thing as, for example.
such structures may include, but are not limited to. So, yeah, it could include more than that, but we're just giving. If someone calls in and says, what counts as concealed, we'll be reading this sentence, so if. We
What I-
are gonna be differentiating on that topic, I think.
What I just heard, there's no proposed changes to the language. Unless somebody wants to offer something.
I don't have any proposed changes to the language.
Okay.
we'll have legal review this. We didn't put in, I don't believe in the agenda that we request a waiver of final hearing. So it is likely to go to two hearings, just so that we have.
Yeah, well, I'll take it. Yeah, well,
Jesus, yeah, so we don't have a waiver of final hearing on all these changes, so that gives us ample time to look at it.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on that part? Okay, I did want to bring up just for your edification that we received a call from somebody who has property on the west side. And they were incorrectly zoned PUD, so similar to what we had on South Rogers Street. 1929. Here. Okay, so this was again an area that was formerly under the jurisdiction of the city of Bloomington Planning Authority. We have these two lots and we have had for several years. These two lots are zoned PUD and they're now for sale. Someone came in and asked why this density is drastically less than some of the density of these other lots in the PUD. And when we redrew the legal description of what was truly rezoned PUD, it actually excluded these two lots. So we have talked with the sellers and some other potential buyers, and we stated that we will be taking this to ordinance review committee to start the process of an authored rezone similar to what we did on South Rogers Street. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention since you will see that.
When you were asking about the proposed amendments, I thought you were talking about that one discussion with, there was nothing else that was driven more from county discussion outside of state changes?
Okay, so going back to the zoning ordinance amendment, your question is there anything else that
Yeah.
staff added that's not state law?
Yeah, that you would want to discuss, because I was looking at, get to that section. One general, that question in itself, like you mentioned, a lot of these were more driven based off of state changes. Was there anything else? And then I had a particular one,
Okay.
like, just from like that running list, there's a lot in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of subsequent change being proposed. And so my question, just from that list, what else is not necessarily state driven? And even
So
things
the
with,
police terminal was staff,
okay,
the temporary or seasonal activity was staff.
okay,
And then I believe there were maybe 2 Scrivener errors that were staff. So,
and I want to address, what I find is somewhat of counter. Intuitive or maybe some clarity, but the removal, chapter 846.
sure, removal of number,
Yeah.
that's state law.
Right, and this is, well, I just want to understand it a bit more, and I just had, so that same language looks like it's been added several times. Several chapters.
It's in it twice. So here it is. Member of the plan commission serves at the pleasure of the appointing authority, I can, that clause so long as.
talked about this before.
This is verbatim from the state law.
Yeah,
That's why we talked about it.
can be removed so long as the officer holder who appointed the individual continues to hold the office or the board, committee or body that appointed the individual retains all of the same members who served on the board, committee or body. So is that saying like, if someone's appointed and there's a new group, they can't remove them without cause? Well, I'm just trying to follow along.
Yeah,
Can
so
you
not the,
removed without cause as sentinel, as so like, let's say, we get a new extension, uh, representative, as a reasonable
yeah,
decision, that would change the body, right? Or let's say the representative from the county council, that we have a new representative there, which seems like a possibility.
right.
They can't remove that person or reappoint a new person without cause.
So those two examples are difficult, because those are required seats on the
Okay.
plan commission, but let's say the citizen members. Hey,
Okay.
you wanna address this question? So
So if
the
the,
board of commissioners changes hands, and the new board of commissioners
appoint,
appoint somebody. Can they take out a citizen member on the plan commission?
without cause, because there is a section.
If the same group that appointed it.
That's what that's saying, right?
Yeah.
But if someone changes, they can't. Which I favor that, honestly. I'm just trying to get some.
So I'm
clarity.
appointed for 4 years
Yes,
and I'm a citizen. Okay, and now the county commissioners, they've had an election and you got new people in there.
Right,
And somebody decides that they don't want me on the plan commission, even though I've been appointed for a 4-year period.
without cause, which.
Okay, can, based on the consensus, the new consensus of those county commissioners, can they remove me even though I'm in there for a 4-year period?
Without cause.
Without cause, and that's what that,
wouldn't it would be under.
No, there's other things that says with cause.
even though I've been appointed, they could revoke that appointment.
Right.
That's that's the way I read it.
He said you serve with pleasure.
Yeah,
That's what I mean.
That's right.
As,
I just
as
answered the
long as the commissioner's board has the same 3 members as who originally made the appointment, you could be asked to step down, but I think it's a
Without
terrible law.
cause.
I think it's a terrible law. I'm not talking about cause. I'm talking without cause. Let's not even talk about
Cause
cause.
is a different
It's terrible.
yeah, I don't love the without cause. I think if you should be appointed, you should be able to serve your term. So my question goes back up to the section up here, keep going up. And then it's just funny, where was it?
I'm thinking of
The number 3, the term of the office of the appointed county surveyor shall be for 1 year, but may not exceed the appointed county surveyor's term. So if I appointed someone like the very last day I decide to serve office and then don't run and someone else becomes a county surveyor, that person's going to be able to stay as that appointee and can't be removed without cause.
It says that
Those just conflict with me, and that's what I'm trying to reconcile with.
it says that if you appoint somebody the day before you're to leave office, that person, that appointee's term ends with your term. That's what it says.
Yeah, that's what that part
Yeah.
says. And is that the state part, or I would assume it is,
This is
but,
changed.
but it kind of conflicts with the new part, is what I'm saying. So, never mind, that's just where my curiosity of wanting to explore this
A lot of us
discussion
don't like
was.
the
It just
language, but
seems
it's-
tricky. I agree with what Commissioner Thomas said. If someone's appointed for a 4-year term, they should be able to serve that term and not be removed without cause. Cause should be a huge consideration for removing any type of person that serves on a public board or committee. But that's it. Thanks. Sorry, I was just wanting a little clarity. It wasn't reconciling with me and I don't know if it's
So
still.
Jackie, are there any other comments in this ordinance that you want to talk about? Are there other areas you want to talk about? I assume everybody has read that multi-page document that we all have in front of us and have studied these things in an in-depth level, 6 hours worth at least.
15 pages.
Okay, because I know, I did. I spent most of the afternoon going through this. Anyway, so if there's no other questions on ZOA 26-3, realizing, of course, this will go to the Plan Commission and then to the county commissioners. There's no other topics. Let's move on to the last item. And that is any other business not on the agenda.
Look,
And if they're seeing none, let's go ahead and adjourn.
Yeah.
so moved.